JK, pick your own world name now. We saved everybody. Hikaru made a good choice. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Wonder of Anime YouTube channel. My name is Lisa and we are finally back for part 2 of my Clamp Reread series for Magic Knight Rayearth 2, I guess, part 2. I didn't realize that I had this video all drafted out, all my notes ready, and I had been putting it off for the longest because I just wasn't remembering everything that happened, and I was like too busy reading other stuff to read through it. And then I was looking through my notes and I realized, oh, I have this entire video done. I just need to hit record. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm very excited because after this, things are changing, y'all. Things are changing. If you haven't watched part 1 of the series, I highly recommend that you do, as I talk about like the background information on how Magic Knight Rayearth came to be. But if you've already watched that and you're coming here, let's just jump right into it. Magic Knight Rayearth 2 was published in Nakayoshi magazine, same magazine from part 1, from March 1995 to April 1996. And then later it was published in book form by Kodansha. As I discussed in part 1, Magic Knight Rayearth does have an anime. Now the anime episodes 1 through 20 cover the first part, Magic Knight Rayearth 1, those first 3 volumes, and then from episodes 21 to 49, which is season 2, that covers Magic Knight Rayearth 2. Now, Magic Knight Rayearth 2, in terms of being adapted into the manga, they changed a lot of information and kind of took more liberties, created characters. In my opinion, after now having read Magic Knight Rayearth 2, I can totally see why they took those liberties and added some changes. I still haven't watched the anime, but knowing what I know now, it makes sense that they made some changes. While Magic Knight Rayearth 1 definitely had like serious moments, the overall tone for me of the manga was more happy, and there was a lot of like comic relief moments in between the girls and kind of like the events that were happening. Magic Knight Rayearth 2, there is a complete total tone shift, and it's much more somber, and there are more comedic moments in between other characters that are introduced in this part of the series as opposed to like between the girls themselves. When the series picks up again, time has passed, a year, maybe 2, and the girls have resumed their regular lives in Tokyo, but they cannot forget all the events that happened in Cefiro. I mean, it was kind of really traumatic how, you know, the princess died at the end, basically was like sad over love. They're trying to go on with their lives. They're very depressed and they're still meeting up regularly. So they decide to meet at Tokyo Tower, and once all 3 of them are united, they are summoned back to Cefiro. And when they're summoned back, they're welcomed by Precia, Guru, Clef, and Ferio. At this point, they really don't know how they got back. The first time they were summoned by Princess Emerald, but she's no longer there, so who brought them back? It is revealed at this point that Ferio is the prince, and he's actually Emerald's younger brother. This wasn't brought up in part 1, but it was questioned why he knew so much information of the legend and never revealed. Since Cefiro is run on will, like the pillar was the person there, her will was what kept Cefiro going. Without her to pray for Cefiro and will Cefiro to live, Cefiro's falling apart. Other worlds learn of this information. We learn that other worlds exist, and they decide to make their way to Cefiro, each with their own goal on claiming Cefiro and becoming the pillars. The girls, they decide to try and they decide to stay and fight to protect Cefiro against those who are coming to try to take over. In Cefiro, in order to become a pillar, there is a road that makes its way available for you to become the pillar, but this is only revealed for who the road thinks is worthy to become the pillar. The first world to make their presence known is Autozam, which brings about Lantis. Lantis is Sagato's brother, who witnessed firsthand Sagato and Emerald's like what they went through. Autozam also has Eagle, who seems to be in love with Lantis. The other worlds include Shizetta and Farin, and they also want to become pillars as well and take over Cefiro for their own reasons. While everyone from the other worlds are talking about claiming Cefiro and becoming the pillar, the people of Cefiro, Guru Clef, Precia, Ferio, and of course Umi, Hikari, and Fu, they're discussing like what a messed up system it is to have a pillar to begin with. No one wants what happened before with Princess Emerald to happen again. And Lantis, who knows of everything because he saw his brother and Princess Emerald, what they went through firsthand, he is set on ending the Knights, just removing them completely to stop history from repeating itself. So of course there's various fights with the other worlds, the Magic Knight Rayearth, and through these fights, Hikaru and Eagle are the only ones with their hearts that are strong enough to become pillars. So they are transported by Mokona into another realm to pass a test. Mokona is revealed to be the creator. They say that they built both Cefiro and the real world Earth, and they made Cefiro as an alternative to Earth because they were like, Earth, I don't know what y'all doing. I don't like this. I'm gonna make Cefiro to be different and have a different outcome. Hikaru ends up passing the test, but they learn that whoever passes the test, only one of them can return, and the loser stays there and passes away, I guess. Hikaru's like, absolutely not. Finds a way to bring back Eagle. Since Hikaru is the new pillar, she eliminates the pillar system. She's like, we're not doing this. We're not causing all this suffering and pain. And everyone agrees that there shouldn't be a pillar. Everybody was kind of in agreement that this was a really tragic system, that no one person should be responsible for the will of the world. And since Hikaru has those powers, now being the pillar, she can do that. Mokona reveals that Emerald didn't believe in the people of Cefiro enough, which is why she thought she had to choose. She didn't give the people in Cefiro the benefit of the doubt or like give them the option to help or make their own decisions. Instead, she chose to die for the system, whereas Hikaru chose for the system to die instead. It ends, and now it's 1996. There's like a time skip, and the girls go to Cefiro. It's implied that Fu and Ferio, they're in a relationship. Umi and Ascot, they're both making, progress in their relationship or trying a relationship. And Hikaru says that she loves both Lantis and Eagle, and also everyone else in the series. And the series ends with them trying to name the new world, and Hikaru breaks the fourth wall and asks the readers what to name the world. And then there's like a little script where you can like write what you named the world. I'm sure listening to that summary, you already identified a lot of Clamp's go-to themes that we discuss in this series that take place in their universes. Most of the themes that I discussed in part 1 carry over, of course, to part 2, but there were a couple ones that in part 2 that were a bit more fleshed out. One of those themes being the option presented isn't the only option. I think up to this point with RG Veda X, Tokyo Babylon, it's always presented that there's this fate, right? And no matter what you do, no matter what actions you take, what is meant to be is going to happen, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. Even if you try to do something different, something is still going to occur, and it's still going to go with fate. In Magic Knight Rayearth, there is the introduction that things don't have to go according to the way that they seem. As Mokona said, Emerald didn't see another option. She thought her only option was to die, and she didn't trust that the people of Cefiro would be able to kind of like have their own will and make decisions on how Cefiro, would continue being. Hikaru's different, and she's able to forge a new option, even a new option that Mokona, the creator, said wasn't possible. Hikaru becomes that pillar and changes what is possible. This makes me think, like, would this have been the ending to X if X was allowed to continue and didn't go on hiatus? I really think that it would be, or maybe Magic Knight Rayearth, I feel like, Magic Knight Rayearth definitely ended before X ended, because X ended in 2003. But I definitely think that maybe that was the direction that it was heading in. As we've seen, RG Veda and X are very similar in terms of fate and kind of some of the things that occur. So I don't put it past Clamp to have been like, oh, I like this option where Hikaru, nobody thinks there's another option and Hikaru just makes another option. And I think that is a good theory on what possibly could have been the ending to X. You know, Kamui making his own choice and making a path that isn't written in the stars. A big theme, of course, that everybody was on board with, that I loved, was that there isn't a need for self-sacrifice. We kind of touched upon this in part 1, where I talked about Fu when she has to fight her inner self, because she's always like putting other people before herself, and she's like allowed to pick herself and put herself first. I feel like that's expanded in this part 2, where everybody was like, we do not want the pillar to be the sacrifice. We don't want the pillar to have this tragic life where they aren't able to make their own choices. And I think this is something later on that we see specifically in XXX Holic, which I learned that people just say Holic, but I'm gonna say the X's. Anyways, in XXX Holic, where Watanuki is always like putting other people first, and everybody's like, chill, like you do not always have to like beat yourself up for everyone else. I feel like there is a lot of the beginnings of that here in Magic Knight Rayearth. Personal wishes versus the duty of the world. We've seen before, you know, Clamp, they're always going to make the main character pick like their own personal happiness, and like, oh, you be happy or the whole world falls apart. Like, I don't know why they love making their main characters suffer, but that is definitely part of their universal themes. And finally, someone isn't who they say they are, but that person isn't entirely evil. Now, in this series with Mokona, this is so funny to me because I read Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles and XXX Holic simultaneously back in high school. And I know Mokona through those series where Mokona talks, is hilarious, is like the comic relief character. Yes, they have their serious moments, but mostly they're funny characters. So now in this world where it is revealed that Mokona was the creator, was just like, really, Mokona, you the one that's the creator? That was kind of shady. Because I'm just like, Mokona, how? But, you know, this is something that we see again later on. We kind of see it, you know, in Tokyo Babylon, where Seishiro's, that was a terrible example. Seishiro's a terrible person. I would say like Kendappa and RG Veda, where she was on the opposing side, but it wasn't like she was evil, like she was trying to, you know, do it for love. I think of like in Chobits, where the landlady ends up being like, she was the adoptive mom of Chi and Chi's sister, Freya. So it's like these people pretend not to be a big role, or more so it's like they're introduced kind of like side characters, and then at the end it is revealed that they actually play a huge part in the story. And Clamp is always going to do that. But I love, like I said, although Cefiro had unjust rules, like Mokona's not necessarily evil. They just thought that this was the best option, and clearly it was not. For my personal thoughts with Magic Knight Rayearth, as you saw in my previous video, I absolutely loved part 1 of Magic Knight Rayearth. I love that it was like a friendship-based story. Magic Knight Rayearth just combines so many elements that I absolutely love and adore. And Magic Knight Rayearth 2 doesn't do it for me. I enjoyed the story. I thought the story was entertaining to read, but I really didn't like the direction that it went in with the whole like pillar sacrifice and just like this dark grim tone that it took. And I understand why, because they're trying to prevent what happened, like the tragedy with Princess Emerald and Sagato. Like, they don't want that to happen again. And being a pillar does have a lot of weight. You know, it's something serious. Like, this person is a sacrifice for the world, so of course there is going to be a lot to think about. But I feel like this this story was just such a departure from, while yes, the other part was like fun, but had its serious moments, it really had a lot of joy and comedic elements. And I really didn't feel that in this second part of Magic Knight Rayearth. I think with this, there was many characters that spent a lot of time being sad, thinking things through, and really just trying to figure out like what their course of action was. And it was just really somber. And I feel like it was just such a departure from the fun adventures that part one took, that I really didn't enjoy part two as much as I wanted to. I love the introduction of the characters. I love Eagle, Lantis. You know, the other worlds were like forgettable. I can't even remember the names of the characters. But I just feel like there was more that could have been done. And possibly that's why it was expanded as much as it was in the anime, and they took different liberties that they did in the manga. But I was a little bit disappointed in the direction that the story went. And I do like that there had to be a new pillar. I do like that it was Hikaru that became that pillar. I just wished the vehicle to get them there had been a little bit different and maybe not as like sad. I don't know, but I guess they did experience something really traumatic at the end of the first part. But those are just my feelings. I just really, the departure was so much for me that I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I could have. One really interesting observation that I made with Magic Knight Rayearth Part 2 is, in terms of the Clamp universe as a whole, this series, like I said, ran from 1993 to 1996, and X, I believe, started in 1992 and ran to 2003. And a lot of Clamp's works run simultaneously, and they run at the same time in different magazines. However, in terms of chronological order, Magic Knight Rayearth, after this, the manga, like the series that they start getting into, Chobits, Cardcaptor Sakura, Angelic Layer, Wish, Clover, while they handle some deep, dark themes, they don't ever go back to the darkness and the extent that was X, Tokyo Babylon, RG Veda. Savasa Reservoir Chronicles and XXX Holic are deep and dark, but not in the same way that X, RG Veda, Tokyo Babylon are, where they really, really, really leave you feeling hopeless and despair. And Magic Knight Rayearth, to me, in terms of reading it in chronological order, is that turning point where we see the first part of the series end really dark and in despair. Princess Emerald dies, Sagato dies, Cefiro's left without a pillar, and it's like, wow, like the story ends and we did what we were supposed to do, kind of, but no one is happy. And then part two, like I said, is a really somber part of the story where they're dealing with the aftermaths of those deaths and they're trying to figure out what is next. To me, what stands out, and I feel like is that turning point, is that a lot of part two is very, very somber, and then right up until the end where Hikaru's like, oh, I have an option. I could do things differently. I don't have to follow the path that Emerald followed before. I can make the changes and not lead us into tragedy. And I feel like that really causes like this shift where in future Clamp works, there are deeper, darker themes, but we don't feel that hopelessness and despair that we felt throughout reading this. Because Magic Knight Rayearth, had you been reading Clamp in chronological order and you are not reading, you haven't read Chobits, Cardcaptor Sakura, anything like that yet, you would think this is going to ultimately end just as horribly as RG Veda, Tokyo Babylon. Like, it just doesn't seem like there's a way out. And truly, after this, Clamp kind of like doesn't leave us feeling as hopeless anymore throughout their series. X is kind of like debatable. And I think RG Veda, like there was an ending, whereas X doesn't have an ending. And Tokyo Babylon, we can argue that the ending, you know, was an unfinished story because it leads into X, but still, like, just judging on our RG Veda being that it is a finished story. The end, so many people died, like, you don't feel happy. I was not feeling happy at the end of that story. Same with Tokyo Babylon. If you are just taking Tokyo Babylon for what it is without like going into X, that is not a happy ending. Like, you are despaired, you are hopeless, like, you just don't feel any happiness. Arguably, we don't know what happens in X. And like I said, I'm theorizing now that maybe it was going to be like Kamui picks his own ending and changes things. But it still would be hopeless because we have lost so many people that it would not have been a happy ending, as opposed to a Magic Knight Rayearch where I kind of almost went into that deep hopelessness and was like, JK, pick your own world name now. We saved everybody. Hikaru made a good choice. Which I agree with. I love the fact that Hikaru was able to change things. But that's why I believe that it was such a pivotal shift in Clampworks and the future of the themes that we'll see in subsequent series. Alrighty, y'all. That has been part 2, Magic Knight Rayearch 2, part 2 of the video series. And next up, I believe, is Wish. So I am so excited to be getting back to these videos. I was waiting to get my studio set up, and I'm actually I'm in our basement, which is like our game room. It's going to be our manga library, movie room, fun cave. But I'm finally getting my bookshelves, and the studio will be set up within a week or two, but I kind of really missed recording and I wanted to jump back into that. And I was like, I don't need my studio to do that. But yes. Oh, and just an announcement before I forget, April 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I am streaming on YouTube right here on this channel for my March Manga Madness series, which is almost coming to an end. If you've been following me on social media, I've been posting a manga series from my collection every single day for March. And like I said, I am ordering my bookshelves. They will be here, and I'm going to go live setting my bookshelves up and talking about March Manga Madness and answering questions about my collection, as well as talking about how you can build your collection and buying used manga and all that fun stuff. So make sure you come back, save the date. I'll be sure to put a little link so you can get notified of the live when it happens. And I'll see you back here. Thank you guys so much. And as always, peace.